From the Australian point of view, we have heard nothing from the Australian Prime Minister since Copenhagen. There has been no report delivered to the Parliament about what happened in Copenhagen. You're still concerned, aren't you, about the draconian nature of all this legislation and what it would mean to national economies?
I've just been to Bonn, where the UN was holding the first of what's going to be a series of almost weekly conferences between now and Cancún in Mexico this December, which is a sort of rerun of Copenhagen, in the hope that they can stitch up and stitch together a world government treaty to take charge of the world's economies and environments and taxation with a view to effectively doing away with democracy worldwide. And just to test the waters, I went to the documentation centre at the conference and I said, please could I have a copy of the September the 15th, 2009 draft of the Copenhagen Treaty, the draft which, although it didn't make it to Copenhagen, contains the very detailed blueprint for the new world government. The word government appears in the treaty. All free markets were going to be done away with and regulated by the new government. The new government was going to have the power to impose taxes greater than all taxes now being levied around the world. It was going to have the power to intervene in the economic as well as the environmental circumstances of every nation. That draft is still being circulated. So we haven't yet killed it, and it needs to be watched very, very carefully, because if they get away with this, then that is the end of democracy worldwide. I know that may sound like rodomontade. It may sound as though I'm overstating the case. If anybody thinks that, I have 3 words for them: read the treaty.
Yes, and Australians tend to forget because we've got short memories. I mean, it was only Tony Abbott and Nick Minchin that saved us from this fate by pulling out of the coalition front bench and then splitting the party, which caused a party vote, and Abbott's got the vote up by 1 vote, and then suddenly there's no chance of the emission trading legislation going through. I mean, this would have challenged the sovereignty and the economic well-being of our country. People tend to forget that, don't they?
I think we have a lot to thank Tony Abbott for, and also those who persuaded him that he should stand. And I happen to know, and I'm going to tell a tale on you here, Alan, that the last person he spoke to before he finally decided to stand was you. I hope I'm not revealing too much of a confidence there, and I think it's fair to say that you encouraged him to go ahead with that.
Well, I just felt that in the national interest this was so critical. I mean, we were under siege at that time.
Well, I mean, you were absolutely right to do it. He was absolutely right to do it. He triumphed, and it's only by one vote that you need to triumph in these things, 42 to 41, if I remember rightly. Yeah. And he very kindly gave me 20 minutes of his time when I was passing through Canberra on my tour, and I found him to be very lively, very cautious and sensible. He's not going to rush around coming out openly as he used to, saying, I don't believe a word of this. He's playing it very, very cautiously and saying, if we're going to have a scheme, it's got to be a sensible one, an affordable one that doesn't take away our economy and our liberties and our democracy. And that, I think, is a sensible, middle-of-the-road approach.
But you see, the trouble is, public are being influenced here by sections of the media. Now, way back there, Laurie Oakes, who's regarded as some doyen of the media, said, unless Turnbull can bring the climate change dissidents to heel, the Liberals will face humiliation at the polls. Now, all of them lined up with that kind of argument. What hope do the public have in sorting out where the truth lies?
Well, there's a marvellous way of doing that, of course, and that is to listen to the Alan Jones show every morning. Yeah, but there is another way of doing this, and this is you do have a vote if you're listening to this. And most people now, most ordinary people, have seen through this climate nonsense. And I think you should simply see which of your candidates is most enthusiastic about this climate nonsense and vote him out.
But I'm worried, Christopher, as you are indeed, about the young children, because they're being taught now in schools that carbon dioxide is a pollutant. I mean, without carbon dioxide, there's no life on Earth here. And the cheapness of Australia's energy is why we're internationally competitive and why we have such significant wealth.
You, of course, have enormous reserves of coal, which you're rightly exploiting. The extraordinary thing is that gradually you're being told you can't use it in your own country, so it's being exported. And, of course, what is really mad is that your so-called greenies won't even allow you to use the uranium, of which you have nearly 40% of the world's supply, to generate entirely carbon-free electricity via nuclear reactors, which these days, of course, are far more productive and far safer than ever they were. And indeed, nuclear accidents have killed remarkably few people worldwide in the civil sector. So I think that that's another way that you could be going. But this is not, of course, about the planet at all. Because here's the thing. All these greenies spend their whole time campaigning that we should clean up our act, even though we already have the cleanest fossil fuel power stations in the world. You know, you can live outside them and hardly get any filth in your lungs anymore. They've cleaned it up so much. Where they should be campaigning is in China, India, Brazil, Russia, Indonesia, South Africa, where they're still using the dirty forms of coal generation, which are polluting in every possible way, the smog and the filth and the dirt and the dust that comes out of those chimneys. That's what needs cleaning up. But do you hear the Green movement campaigning
silent
in those countries? No, you don't. They campaign against us where we've already cleaned up our act, because this is political.
Just a quick one then before you go. What is then going to happen? What are you going to be saying at that rally and of about 1 million people in Washington?
I'm going to explain very briefly why it is that we know scientifically that there is no problem with the climate. Considerable work's been done in recent years on that. I'm then going to say why, even if there were a problem of the size imagined by the UN, mitigating climate change by reducing carbon emissions is not the way forward. Adaptation to any changes that may occur, as and if they occur, is orders of magnitude cheaper and more effective. And finally, I'm going to say that really all this is about is the destruction of freedom, democracy and prosperity, targeted particularly at the countries of the West, such as Australia, Canada and the United States, and that they must stand up for freedom or lose it forever.
Good on you. Good to talk to you, and thank you for your time and good luck.
God bless you, Alan, and well done for your wonderful contribution in Australia.
Thank you so much. That's Viscount Moncton. It's 7:30.